He took out my trash and then, like it was nothing, asked me to dinner. That's the sentence that will haunt me, I can tell. It'll sit in the back of my head like a sticky jingle, popping up when I'm brushing my teeth or trying to meet a deadline. Because that's how it started, not with fireworks, not with a dramatic rescue in the rain, just me, an overflowing trash bag, and a man who looked like someone's outdoorsy Pinterest board escaped into real life. I stepped off my porch in pilled pajama shorts and a t-shirt with a coffee stain shaped like Florida. The evening was one of those suburban postcards, golden light snagging on the maple leaves, someone's grill giving off a lazy ribbon of smoke, a sprinkler ticking like a clock. Our townhouses share a fence and a narrow gravel path that leads to the communal dumpsters. I trudged down it, bag thumping against my leg. And there he was. Tall, broad shoulders under an open green flannel, sleeves rolled, forearms tan like he'd actually seen the sun this decade. Dark hair, short but not military. A day's worth of stubble. A mouth that looked practiced at smiling. He had my trash bag in his hand. I said eloquently. That's mine. Figured, he said, and his voice had that low, calm warmth people use with skittish dogs and babies. It was on your porch, and you were squinting at your laptop through the screen door like it was trying to sell you a timeshare. Thought I'd help. He tipped his chin toward the dumpster. I'm Trey. I just moved in. Of course he was. Of course the universe sent me a neighbor who looked like a summer camp counselor, and sounded like he had a full 401k. Lucas, I said. Thanks for manhandling my refuse. Truly the stuff of sonnets. He grinned like I'd handed him a cookie. Happy to provide inspiration. He hoisted the bag into the dumpster like it weighed nothing, then wiped his palms on his jeans. The air shifted with him, warmer, a hint of cedar and something spice-sweet I couldn't place. I told myself it was the grill smoke, or my own brain chasing metaphors because I'm a screenwriter and we do that. I do that. Especially when I haven't slept. So, he said, casual. You like chicken? I mean, philosophically? As dinner. I do, I said, in the sense that I enjoy not starving. He nodded solemnly, as though I'd made a strong point at a town hall. Great, I made too much. My mom raised me to cook for a family of 6 and then abandoned me to bachelorhood with no portion control. You could help me finish it. Unless you have plans with your laptop? It and I are in a toxic relationship, I said. Boundaries have been discussed and ignored. Sounds like you need a rebound. With poultry? I had a rule about alphas. Several rules, actually. Itemized list, color-coded. Never accept favors. Never let them set the frame. Never mistake intense eye contact for intimacy. And never, under any circumstances, let biology write your story. I could recite it in my sleep. But saying no in the face of roasted chicken and that easy grin felt like slamming a door on my own curiosity. Also, my fridge held a lemon, half a wilted herb bundle, and the haunting memory of last week's takeout. Fine, I said. But if you're a serial killer, at least bring out your best plates. Wouldn't dream of anything less, he said, and for a second the look in his eyes warmed, softened, like he was relieved. Which made no sense. We were neighbors. Dinner wasn't a vow. Inside his place, it smelled like cinnamon and something savory. The living room looked halfway between a magazine spread and a work in progress. Farmhouse table, sturdy, worn. A couch in a practical gray, boxes stacked neatly against the wall with labels in block letters. Kitchen, tools, books. A splash of personality hung above the fireplace. Framed trail maps and a photo of a woman with Trey's eyes laughing at the camera, hair caught in wind. Your mom? I asked. Yeah. He glanced up at the photo, something like fond mischief slipping over his mouth. She does 2 things better than anyone: give advice and ignore it. Relatable, I said. My best friend Jace does that. But with rocks. Rocks? Geologist. If you get stuck in a conversation about sedimentary layers, don't say I didn't warn you. I won't. Though I do appreciate a good strata. He poured iced tea into mismatched glasses and handed me one. His kitchen was small, clean, with the kind of order that says someone knows where every spatula lives. On the counter, a cast iron skillet held a golden chicken nestled in lemon slices and onions. Steam rose, fragrant and comforting. My stomach broke into applause. I accept defeat, I said. This does smell like a better life choice than arguing with my email. High praise. He carved, movements efficient. I used to cook with my mom on Sundays. She says good food is how you talk people into telling the truth. Manipulative, I said. I respect it. We ate at the table with the window open. Crickets started their nightly orchestra. The houses across the street blinked their lamps on one by one. He asked what I did, and I watched his face while I chose how to answer, because that's a game I play, see who gets weird. I write, I said. Screenplays mostly. Freelance. Anything I'd know. He looked genuinely interested, not predatory, not sizing me up for a trophy shelf. Probably not, I said. Unless you were one of the 12 people at the indie festival in Dayton who stayed through the credits because your ride was late. I admire that kind of stealth audience cultivation, he said. I build things, houses, cabinets, porches that don't collapse when you look at them funny. That explains the arms. He blinked. I blinked. The air did that subtle dance where two people realize they said a thing that could be a thing. Thank you, he said, polite like I'd complimented his dog. You've got good eyes. They're very observant. Occupational hazard. I pushed a piece of onion around my plate. It tasted like comfort. So, Trey who builds things, welcome to the neighborhood. Thanks. He lifted his glass. To good neighbors. I clinked his glass. To mutually consensual fence maintenance. We traded small histories the way you test the temperature of a pool, one toe at a time. I learned he moved back to help his mom downsize. He learned I ran on caffeine and deadlines, and avoided HOA meetings like the plague. He laughed easily, not in a loud look at me way, but like he actually found me funny. That's dangerous, I thought. That's how people get past the first gate. After the plates were pushed aside and the tea sweated rings on the wood, he leaned back, looked at me in that steady way of his, and said, very simply, "You're my mate." Silence is a character all its own. It moved in, sat between us, folded its legs, and smiled. I felt it first in my spine, that ridiculous prickle like my body had been listening harder than I had. Heat rose under my skin, this slow cresting wave that had nothing to do with the oven still warm behind us. I am not a romantic. I am not. I've been the object of an alpha's certainty before, and it always felt like standing under a spotlight you didn't turn on. But there was something different in the way he said it. Not a claim exactly, more like an observation he was prepared to be wrong about. I took a breath and set my fork down very gently, like the table was bugged. That's quite a line. It's not a line. Oh, good. Because I'd have to grade it. I widened my eyes, performed the shrug. Humor is my parachute. Listen, I'm sure I'm very sniffable, but I don't do Destiny. I've seen how that movie ends, and it's 90 minutes of red flags with a misleadingly upbeat soundtrack. He didn't flinch. I believe in choice more than destiny, he said. But I also believe in instincts. Mine are loud around you. Mine are telling me you're very good at chicken, I said. And maybe also that you're used to getting what you want. I am, he said, and then surprised me. But I don't want anything you don't want. The words landed like a soft thing with weight. My chest did a weird, traitorous ache. I hated that. Look, I said softer than I intended. I like dinner, I like this. But if this is going to be a biology sales pitch, I'm not buying. No pitch, he said. Just information, and an invitation. To what? Tomorrow, I'm going to attempt a porch swing installation without swearing. His mouth tugged up. You could supervise. For safety, I echoed. I could feel the rules flapping their protest signs in my head. Don't accept favors. Don't let him set the frame. Don't. Maybe, I said. If you promise not to mansplain torque. I would never, he said solemnly. I would demonstrate it. I stood because it felt like the right time to stand. Like if I sat there another minute I might say something that sounded like yes to things I wasn't ready to yes to. At the door, he handed me my hoodie from the chair back like it was something precious. Thanks for the help with my trash, I said, and made it a joke because I didn't know what else to do with how my hands wanted to shake. "Anytime," he said. The porch light caught the green in his eyes. "Good night, Lucas." "Good night, Trey." Outside, the air had cooled, the grill smoke gone ghost thin. I walked the gravel back to my place, hoodie over my shoulder, skin still humming like I'd leaned into an electric fence and liked it. Behind me, I heard him close his door, low and careful, like he didn't want to startle anything. Back inside, I told myself I would not look out the kitchen window. I told myself I would not check if his light was still on. I checked the window. His light was on, and my stupid heart, traitor that it is, knocked once, twice against my ribs like it wanted him to hear it. There's a difference between a friendly neighbor and whatever Trey is. A friendly neighbor might wave from across the street, maybe offer you zucchini from their garden once a year. A friendly neighbor does not, for example, learn your coffee order within 72 hours and start showing up with it like some kind of caffeine fairy in flannel. The first time it happened, I was on my porch, trying to coax my mailbox open without losing a finger to the rusted hinge. He appeared at the bottom of my steps holding 2 paper cups, steam curling into the cool morning. "Figured you could use this," he said, holding out the one with the green logo and my preferred shade of cardboard sleeve. "Double latte, extra shot." I stared at him. "Did my trash tell you that?" "You mumbled it at the dumpster on Monday," he said, like that was a perfectly normal thing to remember. I took the cup. "You keep that kind of memory up, people are going to start thinking you're trying to seduce them." He smiled in that infuriating, steady way. "Only the ones I'm actually trying to seduce." The second time, he intercepted my mail when the delivery guy dropped it 2 doors down. He knocked and handed me the stack, the top envelope a glossy flyer for scented candles shaped like cupcakes. "Important documents," he said gravely. "Essential," I agreed. "You really saved my assets." The third time, I came home to find him crouched by my fence with a toolbox. "It was leaning," he explained, tightening a hinge. "It's been leaning for 3 years," I said. "That's how it shows character. Now it shows stability," he said, like that was an upgrade. I could feel the rules in my head getting shredded one by one. Do not accept favors. Do not let him into your routines. Do not. Inside, Miso had apparently chosen her new religion, sleeping exclusively on the navy work jacket Trey had accidentally left draped over my porch chair after fixing the fence. I'd tried moving it. She'd hissed like I was attempting arson. So it stayed, a fuzzy shrine to her chosen alpha. One late afternoon, I found him leaning against my porch railing like he'd been installed there at birth. The sun was low enough to catch in his hair, turning the edges gold. He had a cup of coffee in one hand and my favorite bakery bag in the other. "Please tell me that's a bribe," I said, stepping onto the porch. "Peace offering," he said. "You look tired this morning." "Or maybe I always look tired," I said. "Don't insult my brand." He handed over the bag, still warm, cinnamon scone. "Thought you could use the sugar." I took a bite just to avoid saying thank you. He watched me like he was cataloging the reaction, eyes bright, mouth hinting at a grin. "You know," he said, "it's weird, but your scent is familiar, like I've known it a long time." I froze with scone halfway to my mouth. "That's a line." "It's not a line. It's also creepy," I said. "But I'll give you points for commitment." He leaned on the railing. "You've heard of scent-bonded pairs, right?" "Oh sure," I said. "That's the brochure you alphas hand out with the welcome packet, right?" "Congratulations. Your hormones have chosen your spouse." "That's not..." He stopped, exhaled through a small smile. "You don't believe in it?" I swallowed a crumb. "I believe in people using biology as a shortcut to skip the part where they actually get to know each other. Which, shocker, doesn't work out as magically as promised." His gaze softened, like he was trying to read the spaces between my words. "Maybe for some. But for others." I raised a hand. "Don't start the sales pitch. I'm a lost cause." "You're not lost," he said. "Just defensive." "Defensive keeps me alive," I said. "And keeps me from ending up in someone's destiny scrapbook." He laughed then, low and easy, and it did that annoying thing where it felt good to hear it. Like warm water over cold hands. When he left, The porch felt bigger and emptier than it had 10 minutes before. Back inside, Miso was sprawled over his jacket, paw tucked under her chin, purring in her sleep. I stood there for a long moment, watching her chest rise and fall, listening to the steady sound. Maybe I was imagining it, but I swore the fabric still smelled faintly like him. Cedar and that elusive spice-sweet note, like cinnamon brushed over firewood. I shook my head. No. Not going there. I've survived 29 years without getting dragged into an alpha's orbit, and I have no intention of being another case study in True Mates. I've seen that movie. I know the ending. And yet, my fridge was suspiciously full of scones lately, and every time I heard footsteps on the gravel path outside, my chest did this ridiculous anticipatory flutter. It's nothing, I told myself. Just a neighbor being neighborly. A neighbor who somehow already knows exactly how I take my coffee, fixes my fence without asking, and leaves a jacket my cat refuses to give back. Yeah, nothing at all. By the third week of Trey's I just happened to be here routine, I'd run out of casual excuses for why I was letting him into my evenings. That night he'd brought Thai takeout, because I'd mentioned once that I liked curry, and apparently he files away every scrap of intel like a secret agent. We sat cross-legged on my living room floor, cartons spread between us, Miso patrolling the perimeter in case something hit the carpet. Halfway through my pad see he said, "You really don't believe in scent bonds at all, do you? There are questions you can sidestep with humor, but this wasn't one of them." I set my chopsticks down, more to buy a breath than from any need for a pause. "No," I said finally, "not for me." He tilted his head, waiting. I hated how patient he could look, like he was giving me space to hang myself with my own words. "It's not that I don't think they exist," I said. "I think people use them as an excuse, a shortcut. Sometimes a weapon." His brow furrowed slightly. "Weapon?" I leaned back against the couch. My ex, Evan, used to say we were bonded, that it meant we were meant to be, that I was supposed to want the same things he wanted, all the time, no discussion. The words felt like they were coming from somewhere under my ribs. If I wanted to go out with friends, he'd remind me that real mates didn't need anyone else. If I didn't want to, be with him on his schedule, he'd act hurt, like I was betraying some sacred instinct. Trey was quiet, his expression unreadable in the warm lamplight. The memory came sharper than I expected. A flashback, full color. It's late. My phone buzzes with a group chat notification, friends planning to meet at a bar downtown. I glance at Evan on the couch, hoping tonight's one of the rare times he'll just say, "Have fun." He doesn't look up from his tablet. "What's that?" "Just Jace and the others. They're meeting for drinks." His eyes lift then, slow, deliberate. "Why would you want to do that?" "Because I haven't seen them in weeks," I say, aiming for casual. He sets the tablet down, leans forward. "You're my pair, Lucas. You should want to be with me. Isn't that enough?" I laugh it off. "It's a couple of hours. We'll hang out after." His mouth tightens. "You don't need them. You have me. If you were really bonded to me the way I am to you, you wouldn't even think about going." It's not a shout. It's worse. It's quiet. Absolute. A line drawn in a place I can't cross without consequences. The next time my phone buzzes, I mute it. Back in my apartment, I realized I'd been staring at the rug for too long. Trey was watching me, not like he was dissecting me, but like he was trying to decide whether to speak at all. "That's a lot," he said finally. No judgment, no pity, just a statement. "Yeah." My laugh came out brittle. "So forgive me if I don't get misty-eyed when someone says true mate." He sat back, folding one leg under him. "I'm not Evan." "I know," I said quickly, "because I do, at least logically. But you're an alpha, and alphas have patterns." His mouth curved faintly. "So do omegas." I narrowed my eyes. "Careful." "I'm just saying," he said, holding up a hand. "We're not our categories, not unless we want to be. I believe in instincts, but I believe more in choice. In someone looking at you, knowing they could push, and not pushing." For a moment there was something in his eyes I couldn't quite read. A weight. A promise he hadn't said out loud yet. Then he blinked, leaned forward, and tapped the carton nearest me. You gonna finish that curry, or should I? Just like that, the air shifted. He was talking about food now, not my past, letting me step back from it, without making me explain more than I wanted to. I pushed the curry toward him. Take it. I was going to save it, but now I'm imagining you fighting Miso for it later. She'd win, he said without hesitation. We fell into lighter talk, movies we love, mutual loathing of HOA regulations, until the evening slid into that easy quiet where you don't feel like you have to fill it. When he left, I caught myself watching the way his shoulders moved under his jacket, the easy way he took the steps. I reminded myself firmly that he is not Evan, that he hasn't once made me feel like I owe him anything. But that's the problem, isn't it? Sometimes the absence of pressure feels more dangerous than the pressure itself, because it makes you wonder what you'd do if the choice were really yours. After the conversation about Evan, I needed a voice that wasn't mine bouncing around in my head, preferably one that came with sarcasm and caffeine. Saturday morning found me in my natural habitat, hunched over a chipped mug in the corner of the coffee shop on Main, pretending to work while people watching. Jace slid into the chair across from me with the kind of energy that said he'd already been awake for hours doing something wholesome, like climbing a rock face before breakfast. He wore what he always wore, cargo pants with too many pockets, a fleece vest, and that weathered ball cap that looked like it had survived at least 3 expeditions. His beard was a week past trimmed, his smile a mix of mischief, and "I told you so." "So," he said, drawing the word out, "how's your new neighbor?" I took a sip of my coffee. Overly present, infuriatingly competent. "Brings me scones." Jace raised a brow. And what? "And you're still here, talking to me, which means he hasn't kidnapped you, or moved in. Progress." He leaned back, folding those geologist's arms. "Good alpha doesn't rush. If he's pushing, that's a red flag the size of Kansas." I snorted, spoken like someone who's waved a few red flags himself. He grinned, unbothered. "Difference is I own mine. Seriously though, if he's giving you space, that's worth paying attention to. Most guys don't know how to do that. Especially alphas who think they've found their one and only." I shrugged, trying not to picture the way Trey always stepped back when I pulled away. How he never crowded me even when the air between us felt like it was pulsing. "Yeah. He's different." Different can be good. Jace took a gulp of his coffee. Or it can be the opening act before the plot twist. "Just keep your head clear." "Always," I said. And we both knew that was a lie. The farmer's market that afternoon was its usual chaos. Kids darting between stalls, the smell of fresh bread mixing with basil and coffee. Vendors calling out deals like they were auditioning for a game show. I was elbow deep in a basket of heirloom tomatoes when a voice said, "You must be Lucas." I turned to find a woman with the kind of presence that made people move without realizing they were doing it. Mid-50s, silver threaded through her dark hair, green eyes sharp and warm all at once. She wore jeans, boots, and a leather jacket that had clearly lived a life. "Yes?" I said cautiously. "I'm Nora Trey's mother." "Oh." I blinked. "He didn't mention you were in town." Her mouth curved like she knew exactly why he hadn't. "I live about an hour away. Came up for the market and to check on him. He talks about you." I tried not to wince. "Does he?" "Relax," she said, picking up a tomato and examining it like it owed her rent. "I'm not here to interrogate you. I just like to know who's in my son's orbit." "Fair," I said. She set the tomato back and looked me straight in the eye. "Don't build love on biology, Lucas. Biology can play nasty tricks. Hormones lie. Instincts can pull you toward people who aren't good for you. Build it on choice, on knowing the other person for who they are when the rush fades." It was the kind of thing I'd expect from a therapist, not an ex-omega who'd clearly heard her share of true-mate stories. I cleared my throat. "You sound like you're speaking from experience." "I am," she said simply. "Your bond should be something you walk into with your eyes open, not something you trip over because your body said so." I thought about Trey, how he didn't push when I pulled back, how he seemed content to let things breathe. It was unsettling, in the best and worst ways. Nora smiled faintly, like she could read that thought right off my face. "If he's worth it, he won't need biology to keep you." She moved on to the next stall without waiting for a response, leaving me with a bag of tomatoes and a head full of static. Walking home, the sunlight warm on my shoulders, I realized something that made my chest tighten. Trey hadn't actually tried to make me believe in scent bonds since that first week, and somehow, that made me believe him more than any argument ever could. It started with a bag of flour and a bad idea. I was in my kitchen on a Tuesday night, scrolling through a recipe I had no business attempting, when Trey knocked on the door. He didn't wait for me to say come in before stepping inside, holding a grocery bag like it was contraband. "Thought you could use company," he said, setting the bag on the counter. "And also I bought too much basil." "Basil is not a reason to invade someone's home," I said, eyeing him. "Then it's lucky I also brought pasta, tomatoes, and a vague sense of adventure." 15 minutes later, we were both covered in a fine dusting of flour, because I'd made the mistake of turning my back while he was kneading dough. "You're supposed to treat the flour with respect," I said, brushing my shirt off. "I am respecting it," he said, grinning. "I'm just also respecting the law of equal distribution." He reached out, tapped my shoulder with a floury finger, leaving a perfect white smudge. "That's it," I said, grabbing a handful and tossing it at him. The next 5 minutes were less cooking and more strategic sabotage. Miso watched from the safety of the counter, tail flicking like she was judging us both. By the time we got back to the actual recipe, there was flour on the floor, the sink, and somehow the inside of my left shoe. When the pasta was finally in the pot and the sauce simmering, he leaned back against the counter, arms folded, watching me stir. "You're smiling," he said. "I'm not," I said automatically. "You are," he insisted, eyes warm. "Must be the basil fumes." The next weekend, we ended up in the supermarket because Trey claimed he needed one specific spice for something he was cooking. In reality, he treated the trip like a scavenger hunt with no list and no time limit. We started in the spice aisle, where he sniffed jars like a sommelier and handed me cinnamon to verify freshness. From there, things went downhill. "Do you need a set of tiny glass bottles shaped like bears?" he asked, holding up a 6-pack. "Absolutely not," I said. "They're on sale." "There's still no—" 10 minutes later, they were in our cart alongside 3 kinds of cheese I didn't remember agreeing to, a jar of imported olives, and a novelty oven mitt shaped like a shark. "This is why people shouldn't shop without a chaperone," I said, pushing the cart. "I am your chaperone," he said, entirely serious. "You'd come home with just coffee and anxiety if I left you alone." He wasn't wrong. By the time we checked out, the one spice had been joined by half a pantry's worth of snacks, and exactly 0 regard for my grocery budget. He carried the bags to the truck like they weighed nothing, and I tried not to notice the easy way his hand brushed mine when he passed me one. That night, I unpacked the groceries and realized I'd bought things I never buy. Fresh bread from the bakery section, strawberries that looked like they belonged in a commercial, tea I'd never heard of, little pieces of his influence, scattered through my kitchen like breadcrumbs. And then there was the jacket, still on the porch chair, still Miso's throne. I caught myself glancing at the window, wondering if he'd wander over under the pretense of forgetting something else. It hit me then, quiet but solid. I'd started listening for his knock. The thought should have set off alarms. It didn't. Instead, it left me with a restless hum under my skin, the kind that made evenings feel too long when he wasn't there. I told myself it was just habit. People can get used to anything. Good coffee, bad coffee, unexpected scones, surprise trips to the store. But habit or not, I still found myself slowing down on the porch that night, just in case his shadow was waiting at the end of the path. The email came at 11:47 p.m., right as I was about to shut my laptop and pretend I had a healthy relationship with sleep. Subject: "You still think you're better off without me?" My chest tightened before I even clicked it. I didn't need to see the name to know who it was from. Evan. The message was short, 5 sentences, 3 of them veiled threats, 1 half-hearted apology, and 1 that managed to be both a demand and a dare. "We were perfect together. You know that. No one else will understand you like I do." My hands went cold. The cursor blinked in the white space at the bottom like it was waiting for me to answer. I closed the laptop so hard Miso jumped off the couch. "Breathe, Lucas. Just breathe." I fumbled for my phone, Scrolled to Jace's name. It rang twice before an automated voice told me his mailbox was full. I'd forgotten he was in the field this week. Somewhere with more rocks than cell towers. The apartment felt too small, too quiet. I paced from the couch to the kitchen and back, heart pounding like I'd run a mile. Every sound was too loud. The hum of the fridge, the tick of the wall clock, Miso's claws on the hardwood. A knock at the door made me jump hard enough to send my phone clattering to the floor. "Lucas?" Trey's voice, low but carrying. "You okay?" I swallowed. "Yeah," I called back, but it sounded unconvincing even to me. Another pause then. "Can I come in?" I hesitated, then unlocked the door. He stepped inside, wearing a dark hoodie over a t-shirt, jeans, boots. His hair was damp, like he'd just showered, but his expression was sharp with concern. "You sounded off," he said. I tried for a shrug. "Just old ghosts." His gaze swept over me, quick but thorough, like he was cataloging the tension in my shoulders, the way I couldn't quite meet his eyes. "What happened?" I opened my mouth, closed it again. "Evan emailed me." Something in his jaw flexed, but he didn't move closer. "Do you want to talk about it?" "No," I said, and then, quieter. "Yes. Maybe." "I don't know." He nodded, still keeping his distance. "Then just sit. I'll make tea." I sank onto the couch without thinking. Miso hopped back up beside me, curling into my side like a tiny furry anchor. Trey moved around my kitchen like he'd been there 100 times, filling the kettle, pulling mugs from the shelf. When he came back with the tea, I took it automatically. Our fingers brushed, and it felt like static under my skin. "Thanks," I said, my voice unsteady. He sat on the edge of the coffee table, close, but not too close. "You don't have to read anything he sends," he said. "You don't owe him a reply. Or space in your head." "I know," I said. My grip tightened on the mug. "It's just, he knows exactly what to say to get under my skin." "Because he's done it before," Trey said. "But you're not there anymore." Something in the steadiness of his voice cracked the wall I'd been holding up. I set the mug down. And before I could think better of it, I leaned forward, just enough to press my forehead to his shoulder. And that's when it happened. It wasn't gradual. It hit like a wave, thick, warm, saturating the air. A scent that was all heat and spice, and something low and grounding, like the memory of a safe place I'd never actually been. It curled into my lungs, wrapped around my ribs, and for a split second, the world narrowed to him. Trey went still. Then his breath hitched, and I felt the shift in him, subtle but unmistakable. The way his muscles tensed under my cheek. The way his hand, half raised, froze in midair. When I looked up, his eyes were different. Brighter, darker all at once. Pupils blown wide. His breathing was faster, shallower. Like he was holding himself in place with sheer force. "Lucas," he said, and my name sounded like it cost him something to say. I should have pulled back. I didn't. Something in that scent was pulling at me too, coaxing me closer like gravity with a personal agenda. For a heartbeat I thought he'd give in, close the distance, let whatever this was swallow us both. His gaze flicked to my mouth, his fingers flexed. And then, just as suddenly, he pushed back a few inches, putting air between us. The scent thinned, dissipating like steam from an open pot. His chest rose and fell, slower now, but his eyes stayed on me, careful. "Sorry," he said roughly. "I shouldn't." He cut himself off, shaking his head. "You're upset. That's not the time." I stared at him, still trying to catch up. "You stopped." He huffed a laugh, not quite amused. "Yeah, that's the point. I'd never seen an alpha do that. Not when the air was thick with whatever just happened. Not when instinct was right there, ready to take over. And the strangest part? It didn't feel like rejection. It felt like safety." He stayed after that, tea forgotten, conversation soft. And when the clock crept toward midnight, neither of us moved to end the night. The quiet wasn't empty anymore. We stayed on the couch. No rush. No pretending we were just passing time, until it was polite to leave. The tea went cold on the table between us. Outside, The rain tapped against the window in an unhurried rhythm. We talked in low voices, the kind you use when the world outside is asleep and you don't want to wake it. It started with safe topics: music, food, the worst movies we'd ever sat through. But somewhere between my sarcastic rant about implausible rom-com plots and his story about fixing a porch in the middle of a thunderstorm, the conversation shifted. "Do you ever think about it?" he asked. "Think about what?" "Freedom," he said. "What it means. What it costs." I pulled my knees up to my chest. "Sometimes I think it's just making choices without someone breathing down your neck. Not having to justify every step you take." He nodded slowly. "For me, it's being able to choose someone every day. Not because my instincts tell me to, not because I'm afraid to lose them, but because I want to. Because they want me back." The words landed heavier than I expected. "You sound like my friend Jace. He says choice is the only thing worth trusting." "He's right," Trey said. "Instinct fades, attraction shifts, choice, if it's real, sticks." I stared at him, the lamplight catching in his eyes. "You ever been afraid you'd choose wrong?" "Every damn day," he said with a short laugh. "But fear means it matters." Loosened in my chest at that. Maybe it was the hour, maybe it was the way he said it, but I wanted to believe him. We kept talking, about fears, about the things we didn't tell most people. He told me about the time he almost moved halfway across the country just to prove a point to himself. And I told him about how I once turned down a writing job because Evan said it would take too much of my time away from him. Trey's jaw tightened, but he didn't interrupt. He just listened, like every word was worth holding on to. At some point, our knees bumped and stayed that way. Later, his hand brushed mine on the couch cushion, and neither of us moved it away. It was nothing. It was everything. The quiet between us thickened, but it wasn't awkward. It was charged. Like we'd stepped into a current, and didn't know where it would carry us. "Lucas," he said softly. "Yeah? Can I?" His glance flicked to my hand. I turned mine over, palm up. He placed his in it, warm and steady. From there, the touches came in increments, his thumb stroking over my knuckles, the gentle slide of his arm around my shoulders. Each time, he hesitated just enough for me to nod or lean in before he went further. When he cupped my cheek, his palm was calloused and warm, grounding me. "Is this okay?" "Yeah," I said, my voice catching. The first kiss was soft, testing. His breath tasted faintly of tea. He didn't push. He waited for me to lean in again before deepening it. My hands found his hoodie, fingers curling in the fabric. He pulled back just enough to search my face. "Still okay?" "Yes." He smiled. Not the easy grin I'd seen 100 times, but something smaller, more careful. Like I was something worth protecting. We moved to the bedroom slowly, like every step was a choice we were both making. He kept asking, before unzipping my hoodie, before sliding his hands over my back, before kissing me harder. Each time, my answer was the same. By the time we were tangled in the sheets, the room lit only by the spill of moonlight through the blinds, I realized something that made my throat tighten. He wasn't following instinct. He was following me. There was no rush, no edge of urgency like I'd known before. Just warmth, patience, and the steady awareness that at any second, I could stop, and he would stop. When it was over, we lay facing each other, his hand resting lightly against my side. "You okay?" he asked, brushing a stray hair from my forehead. "Yeah," I said. "Better than okay." He smiled faintly, but his eyes were still searching mine. "Good, because that's all I ever wanted to be, for you, good." For the first time in years, I believed it. We drifted off like that, the quiet not heavy this time, but warm. And somewhere in the haze before sleep, I realized that for once, I wasn't thinking about what could go wrong. I was thinking about what I wanted next. I woke to sunlight spilling across my face, and the faint weight of a hand draped over my waist. For a second, I forgot where I was. Then I felt the slow, even rise and fall of Trey's breathing against my back, and remembered everything. It didn't feel strange. It didn't feel like the mornings after with Evan. those sharp-edged silences where every move felt like walking across glass. This was warm. I shifted carefully, and Trey murmured something half asleep, pulling me a fraction closer before letting go. His hoodie, somehow now on the floor, smelled faintly of cedar, and that undercurrent of spice I was starting to recognize even without the intensity of the night before. I slid out of bed and padded toward the kitchen, figuring coffee might help me process the fact that I'd willingly let an alpha spend the night. Miso trotted after me, tail high, and then promptly abandoned me halfway to the counter when she spotted something more interesting: Trey's sock, somehow dislodged from his overnight bag. She carried it back into the bedroom like a trophy. From behind me, Trey's voice, still rough with sleep. "Is she stealing my clothes?" I glanced over my shoulder to see him leaning in the doorway, hair mussed, wearing just sweatpants and an amused expression. "Not stealing. Borrowing," I said, with no intention of returning. He smirked. "Guess I can't compete with her taste." "You shouldn't try," I said, pouring coffee into 2 mugs. "She's ruthless." We sat at the kitchen table, the kind of quiet between us that didn't need to be filled. He sipped his coffee slowly, eyes on me in a way that should have felt intense, but somehow didn't. "He didn't bring up last night. He didn't mention anything about mates or bonding. And I didn't offer. Not yet. Because I like this, waking up without the weight of expectation pressing down." When he finally stood to leave, Miso followed him to the door, brushing against his leg like he belonged here. "She's going to miss me," he said, crouching to scratch under her chin. "She's fickle," I countered, leaning against the frame. He looked up at me, the morning light catching in his eyes. "Guess I'll just have to keep giving her reasons not to be." I rolled my eyes, but the corner of my mouth betrayed me. "Go on before you get cocky." He grinned and stepped out, and I told myself I wasn't already counting down to the next time he'd knock on my door. I'd just gotten back from the grocery store when I saw him, leaning casually against the low fence that separated my yard from the sidewalk like he'd never been gone. Evan. The sight hit me like a punch I didn't see coming. Same leather jacket, same perfectly combed hair, same faint curl of a smile that used to feel like a promise and now just felt like a warning. "Lucas," he said, drawing my name out like a song he thought I still liked. "You look good." I tightened my grip on the grocery bag. "What do you want?" Can't a guy say hello to his... He let the pause hang there, the way he always did when he wanted me to fill it in with something sentimental. I didn't. To someone he used to care about? "Used to," I echoed, heading for the steps. He followed. "You didn't answer my messages. That was the point." His voice dropped into that low, coaxing tone I remembered far too well. "We were good together, Lucas. You know that. You felt it, what we had. That connection doesn't just disappear. You're an omega, I'm an alpha. I spun around so fast he had to stop short to avoid bumping into me. Don't you dare start that again." He blinked, caught off guard. I could almost see the gears turning, trying to reframe his approach. "I'm just saying, you'll come back eventually. You always do. You're not built to be alone." The audacity made me laugh, sharp and humorless. "I'm not alone." For the first time his expression cracked. "So that's it. This is about him, the neighbor. It's about me," I snapped. "And the fact that I'm done letting someone use Bond as an excuse to control me." His mouth tightened, but he still stepped closer. "You think he's different? He'll show his teeth eventually. They all do." I felt movement from the corner of my eye, and turned to see Trey standing a few yards away on the sidewalk, hands in his jacket pockets. His posture was relaxed, but his eyes were locked on us. On me. He didn't interrupt. Didn't storm in to play hero. I realized with a jolt that he was waiting for me to handle it my way. So I did. "Leave, Evan," I said, stepping between him and my door. "And don't come back." For a heartbeat, he just stared at me, as if trying to decide whether to push harder. But maybe something in my face told him he'd already lost, because he finally gave a tight nod, turned, and walked away. Only when he was halfway down the street did Trey approach. "You okay?" I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "Yeah, just Needed to take out the trash. His mouth twitched, but he didn't smile. You want company? I shook my head. Not right now. He nodded once. All right. I'll be next door if you need me. He didn't touch me. Didn't push. Just turned and left, like my space was something worth respecting. And that, more than any grand gesture, made my chest ache in the best way. It was almost dark when I crossed the short stretch between our houses. The cold evening air nipped at my cheeks, but my chest was warm, buzzing with the decision I'd already made hours ago. Trey opened the door before I could knock. Lucas. His voice was cautious, like he wasn't sure if I'd come to talk or to run. Can I come in? I asked. Always, he said, stepping aside. His living room was lit only by the soft glow from a lamp near the couch. It smelled faintly of cinnamon and cedar, his scent muted but familiar. Miso was curled up on one of his throw pillows like she'd been here for days. I stood there for a second, looking at her, then at him. She's decided you're part of the household, apparently. He gave a small smile. Guess I should be honored. I took a slow breath. I've been thinking. About us, about everything. His smile faded into something more serious. Lucas, you don't owe me anything. I know, I cut in. And that's why I'm here. He frowned slightly, not following. I'm free, Trey, I said, the words steady in my mouth. I've fought to be free for years, and I still am, but tonight, I'm choosing you. Not because of some scent or bond or biology, because I want you. His breath caught, and for a moment he just stared, like he was afraid moving would break whatever spell had just settled between us. Lucas. I don't want to be your fated mate, I said, stepping closer. I want to be your choice, and I want you to be mine. For a heartbeat, he looked almost afraid. If we make this bond, if we do this, you have to know it changes things. Not in the way Evan made it sound. But you'll feel me, I'll feel you. There's no undoing it. I'm not here to undo it, I said. I'm here to start it. On our terms. Something in his shoulders eased, and then he was crossing the space between us, his hands warm when they framed my face. Say it again. I choose you, I said. The way he kissed me then wasn't urgent, it was reverent, sealing something invisible between us. I felt it bloom low in my chest, not like a chain, but like a thread, steady, strong, alive. When we finally pulled back, Miso had relocated to the arm of the couch, watching us with the air of a queen assessing her subjects. Trey glanced at her, and then at me. So, is this our first family portrait? I snorted. If it is, you're the one wearing the matching sweater. We ended up on the couch, Miso wedged between us like she'd always been there. The bond hummed quietly between us, not demanding, not pulling, just existing. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was giving anything up. I'd kept my freedom, and still, I'd chosen him.